So you may have seen very, very recently the desperation that people like Nadine Dorries, Michael Fabricant, and other, shall we say, Boris Johnson cheerleaders in the press have been expressing about their fury of this upcoming committee into the Partygate inquiry. Because this is going to be one of those things where I think it is going to answer more questions. One of the things that they are looking at, of course, is the party flats that were not investigated by the police and were not even touched upon by Sue Gray in her own report. So these two, and at least the two we know of, there's meant to be, I think, maybe like another one, or there's could be even two more that we don't know about at the moment that could have taken place. So this inquiry is going to be very, very interesting, to say the least. And I think we're going to see some very explosive testimony during these during these committee hearings. I mean, we already went through the Sue Gray report just a couple of months ago now, and that in itself was some pretty stunning stuff. You know, you had people breaking out into drunken brawls in Downing Street, you know, the karaoke party, people throwing up, and all kinds of, you know, shenanigans that they were pulling. But now it seems that you have people like Nadine Dorries, and there's a group of factions in there that are trying to destroy the inquiry by calling out any MPs or Tory MPs on the committee, by trying to destroy them and pull them down. And by the way, this is the exact same tactics we have seen from Republicans against other Republicans who currently sit on the January the 6th committee investigating Donald Trump. So it's of no surprise that they're trying to pull a similar fate. After all, we've just seen, shall we say, Donald Trump's house raided, but we're still, at this moment in time, as far as I'm aware, we don't yet know the full reason why that raid took place. But today we're going to find out, very interestingly, about how Nadine Dorries is on the warpath, apparently. And this is, I think this could get very, very interesting, to say the least. So, before we go diving into this, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a motivation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way as well. There's, of course, the YouTube thank you button. And of course, there is the Pony Club down below as well. So, on we go to The Independent with their article on this, with the title of Nadine Dorries Waging a Terrorist Campaign Against Partygate Inquiry, says Tory MP on committee. The Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, has been accused of being part of a terrorist campaign to discredit the inquiry into whether Boris Johnson has misled Parliament on Partygate. Senior Conservative MP Sir Bernard Jenkin, who sits on the committee and set to probe the PM this autumn, lashed out when asked about his about Mrs. Dorries' claim of a witch hunt. And by the way, one of the things that we've talked about before, if Boris Johnson sort of wants to survive and maybe remain in Parliament as an MP on the backbenches with that plan of maybe making that grand comeback that he and Nadine Dorries and his other allies envisage, he's got to survive this Partygate probe, because if he doesn't survive it, this triggers a by-election. And then there are serious questions of, can Boris Johnson actually win that by-election and, you know, remain an MP? So it is all to play for. So this is where you can see why they're going after this Partygate inquiry. So anyway, back to it. So when asked about the PM's allies' repeated attacks on the inquiry, Sir Bernard told BBC's Radio 4's programme, World at One programme, that, quote, if anybody is unhappy with that, they should write to the committee with their arguments and we will be compelled to consider them. The MP said, but I don't think the committee can respond to what amounts to a sort of publicity campaign designed to discredit the committee. Sir Bernard added, if people wish to criticise it, please write to the committee. Don't conduct some sort of terrorist campaign to try and discredit the committee, because the privileged committee is how we self-regulate our affairs. Mrs. Dorris has called on 4 Tory MPs on the committee to withdraw from the, quote, witch hunt and the Machiavellian process, with unnamed Johnson allies previously telling the press that the probe amounted to a kangaroo court. Tory peer Lord Goldsmith, another senior Johnson ally, has attacked the highly partisanised, vengeful and vindictive MPs on the committee, claiming that nearly all of the 9 MPs have criticised the PM. But the cross-party committee has insisted its investigation will still go ahead, despite Mr. Johnson's resignation as the Tory leader and his departure from Number 10 in early September. Sir Bernard said that any potential Commons vote to stop the inquiry would mean that we would all have to answer questions as to why suddenly it's not important anymore when it was very important before. The senior backbench insisted that he had still a complete and open mind about whether or not the Prime Minister had misled MPs. Jenkins said that the report setting out the terms of the inquiry last month made clear that it would be a fair process and that Johnson would be not subjected to an unfair prosecution of any kind. The committee inquiry led by the Labour grandee Harriet Harman expects the oral evidence sessions to begin in autumn, meaning the inquiry could be hanging over Mr. Johnson's head for months after he departs Number 10. The report published by the committee has made it very clear, when considering the allegations against Mr. Johnson, that the standard of proof will be on the balance of probabilities. Mr. Johnson's defenders have questioned whether he, quote, deliberately or knowingly misled Parliament during the Partygate saga, but the committee made clear that such commentary was not relevant. A memo states, it is for the committee and the House to determine whether a contempt has occurred in the intention of the commentator, and it is not relevant to making that decision. Mr. Johnson denies misleading Parliament over what he knew of the rule-breaking gatherings going on in Downing Street, and he faces the prospect of a recall petition which could trigger a by-election in his Uxbridge constituency if he's suspended by MPs and investigating whether he lied about the lockdown parties. And the thing about the recall petitions, in the past, recall petitions don't really tend to work. I think only about maybe 3 or 4 recall petitions have actually happened, and even less have actually been successful. So, even then, if he gets caught out by the Commons Committee, he's got a good chance of surviving the recall petition, and then obviously he's got to try and survive that by-election it could trigger. And then, of course, he's got to try and hold that seat in a general election that we've talked before about him potentially changing seats with Nadine Dorries. So there's a lot of stuff that could go on in the next couple of weeks. And trust me, when we start hearing some of this evidence, it will probably dominate the papers just as probably as much as the cost of living crisis that's going on at the same time. So 3 former officials at Number 10 reportedly believe that the Prime Minister did not tell the Commons all he knew about the rule-breaking gatherings held during the COVID crisis. One of the ex-staffers has agreed to give evidence to the Privileged Committee inquiry whether the PM misled Parliament, while 2 others have contacted the committee are considering whether to testify, according to the Telegraph. Asked if Mr. Johnson's misled the Commons, one ex-staff member alleged, absolutely, damn well he did. Another claimed Mr. Johnson knew what was going on. Laura Farris, the Conservative MP for Newry, revealed on Monday that she had stepped down from the Privileged Committee last month. She did not say why she'd taken the decision in a tweet, but she's expected to be replaced by a fellow Tory backbencher. So, as you can see, this is all, I think, going to kick off over the autumn. And I think this could prove to be very, very interesting. If Johnson had stayed, or somehow he had managed to survive those resignations, this, I think, would be what got him. I don't think there's any way of getting out of this Partygate inquiry, this select committee inquiry. I think this will get Johnson again. Whether or not the recall petition works. It potentially could. And of course, he's got to obviously do the by-election, and then he's got to survive an upcoming general election. And there's again questions of whether or not he can survive that. He is going to absolutely get hammered in any by-election. Certainly, the Lib Dems are certainly going to try and reclaim that seat. They've proven that they can be very, very successful in 2 other by-elections. So we'll have to see what happens there. But needless to say, this select committee is certainly going to be one to watch. And I think the evidence given is just going to be as explosive, especially when you've got people saying, yeah, he knew exactly what was going on in Downing Street by one of those ex-staffers there. So, yeah, I think those are going to be the testimonies to watch. And we will bring you them when we hear the news. And if we can get hold of the video of them, then we will show you them of what's just going on in this select committee. But you can see why desperately people like Nadine Dorries and other sort of Johnson allies are desperate to try and trash this committee in any way, shape, or form possible. Because obviously, if he gets caught by this committee, then this will stop the grand return that apparently Boris Johnson has in the works. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and an affiliation link called Buy Me a Coffee, or you can buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. And as always, we'll see you all we'll see you all next time.